The first time I met Jennifer, I was still adjusting to civilian life after my years in the firehouse. I was used to adrenaline and chaos, but now everything felt slower. I had just opened my power equipment store, still trying to get a real foothold in a small town that was more about farming and manual labor than retail. But I was determined to make it work. She was there at a local business event, something one of the chamber members had put together, meant to help the new entrepreneurs connect with the community. I wasn't sure what to expect, but the moment I saw her, I knew something was different. She wasn't like the others in the room. I watched her move, confident and poised, her conversations light and effortless, like she belonged there. At the time, I thought she was just another businesswoman with a polished smile, someone who had probably been trained to handle the small talk. But when she spoke to me, it felt different. We talked about the store, about the struggles of being new in town, and the way people here viewed small business. She listened closely, nodding at all the right points. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. She asked the right questions, kept the conversation flowing, and soon we were talking about everything, from work to our past lives to the things we wanted to accomplish. By the end of the night, I knew I wanted to see her again. The first few months were everything I'd hoped for. Jennifer was supportive. She'd come by the store after work sometimes, bringing lunch, laughing at my attempts to make small talk with customers. Her wardrobe started simple enough, but over time, I noticed the shifts. She started wearing things that were more expensive, more tailored. The clothes fit her tighter, more sharply, like she was becoming someone else. It wasn't just her clothes. Her hours were getting longer too. She'd stay out late, sometimes not even coming home until after midnight. I'd ask her about it, and she'd just smile, telling me that work was busy and she had a lot of projects she was handling. I didn't mind at first. I understood ambition. But after a while, the late nights stretched into more than just work. Then came the receipts. I didn't think much of it at first. A few strange charges here and there, some expensive dinners, a few nights at hotels, things I didn't remember her telling me about. She was good at hiding it, at least she thought she was. But after the fourth time I found a charge for a hotel stay, I started to wonder. The scent of unfamiliar cologne was the next thing that got my attention. She'd come home late, and I'd catch a whiff of it. At first I thought it was just her perfume, but I knew her scent by then. This was something else. I started asking questions, little things, trying to piece it together, but she just brushed it off. "You're overthinking things," she'd say, kissing me on the cheek before she'd disappear up the stairs to shower. Every time she'd come home, she'd rush straight into the bathroom like it was a routine. I stopped questioning it. I trusted her, or at least I thought I did. And then, one afternoon, I overheard her on the phone. I'd been in the garage cleaning up after a delivery when I heard her voice drift down the hallway. She was speaking low, but I could make out some of the words. "Yeah, I know. He's such a worn-out tool. He's holding me back, but I can't do anything about it right now. Not until the big client deal closes. Then, I'll make my move." I froze. I don't know how long I stood there, just trying to process what I'd just heard. She wasn't talking about me like I was her husband. She was talking about me like I was an obstacle, a tool. I felt sick to my stomach. My hands started shaking, and I stepped back slowly, not wanting to hear anything else. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to believe what I'd just heard. I wanted to think there was some other explanation, some miscommunication, but in the pit of my stomach, I knew what was going on. I knew she wasn't just having an affair. She was planning something bigger, something tied to business. The next few weeks were a blur. She went on like everything was normal, chipper, cheerful, talking about her day as if nothing had changed. But every time I looked at her, all I could think about was that phone call. How she'd called me a tool, how she'd dismissed me, how I was just something to get through until she could close a deal and make her move. It was only a matter of time before I would have to face the truth. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed to figure out what was really going on. The clues were stacking up, and I knew one thing for sure. My wife had been playing me for months, and I was too blind to see it until now. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. Scene 3. First reconnaissance. I hadn't told anyone what was really happening, not even my best friend from the firehouse, John. But after that night in the kitchen, after everything had fallen into place in my head, I knew I had to reach out. If I was going to do anything, I needed someone who could help me figure out what to do next. John had been working in private security for a while, Mostly doing things for corporate clients, surveillance, background checks, the kind of stuff that made sure businesses stayed clean. He wasn't the kind of guy to ask questions about someone else's personal life, but I needed someone who could help me set things in motion without anyone else getting wise. We met in a small diner just outside of town, the kind where the coffee's always too hot and the waitresses remember your order without needing to ask. John slid into the booth across from me, already looking like he was in work mode, eyes sharp, posture straight. I didn't waste time. "She's cheating on me," I said flatly, watching him take a sip from his cup. His eyes didn't widen, didn't even blink. He'd been expecting this. John set the cup down, wiping his mouth. "I figured it was something like that. But there's more, right? You wouldn't be calling me in if it was just a fling." I let out a breath, leaning back in the booth. "It's not just a fling. There's something bigger. I don't think this is just about her having an affair. I think it's business related." His eyes sharpened. "You're saying she's involved in something with her company?" "Exactly," I said, pulling out my phone. I slid it across the table to him, showing him a few receipts and hotel bookings I'd found in her name. I've been digging around, trying to figure out who she's been meeting. It's not just casual stuff. She's been meeting with high-ups at her company, traveling to places she hasn't told me about. John examined the phone, his brow furrowed. "These aren't just dinner receipts. Looks like she's been using your credit card for travel too." "Yeah, that's what's been bugging me. I thought I was doing okay, just working my store, keeping things together. But now I'm thinking all this isn't just about a few late nights. She's hiding something bigger, and I think her boss, her regional manager, might be in on it." John sat back, giving me a long look. "You sure this is just business?" I nodded. "I don't know for sure, but I'm getting the sense that it's tied to something more. The way they talk about money and the way she's been acting, it doesn't add up. I think they're making moves behind my back, and I'm just the idiot they think they can walk all over." He let out a low whistle. "You're right to be worried. If this is tied to corporate espionage, it's more than just a cheating spouse. But you're gonna need proof, something that ties them to the money, to the deals, and you're gonna need it before anyone else catches on." I nodded. "I'm already working on that. I've been gathering evidence, but it's not enough yet. I've been watching her, keeping track of her movements, but I need more. I need to know exactly what they're doing and how deep this goes." "All right," John said, looking at me carefully. "You need to be careful. If you're right about her being involved in something serious, you can't just walk in there and confront her. You need a plan, and you need it fast." I ran my hands through my hair, frustration building. "I know, but what do I do? How do I make sure I get everything I need without tipping them off?" "You start by gathering more intel," John said, his voice low. "Get your hands on any documents, emails, records that tie her to the company's clients. If they're using your house as a base, they're bound to leave a trail." I looked at him, feeling a surge of something that wasn't quite hope, but maybe resolve. "You think I can pull this off?" John didn't flinch. "You already are. You just have to be smart about it. Don't rush in without thinking. We'll get the evidence you need, but you've got to be patient. And when it's time to act, we make sure it's done right. No mistakes." I sat there, feeling the weight of what I was about to do settle over me. "All right," I said quietly. "Let's do it." That night, I went home with a calm I didn't feel. I had to act like everything was fine, that I was just another clueless husband trying to keep things together. Jennifer was in the living room, acting like she hadn't just lied to me again. I kissed her on the cheek, trying to keep my composure, the anger and betrayal simmering under the surface. "Hey," she said, brushing some of her hair behind her ear. "You doing all right?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking things over." She gave me one of those knowing smiles, the ones that had always made me feel like I was the lucky one, the ones that had made me fall for her in the first place. I had to act like I still cared, like I still believed in the woman I thought she was. But inside, it was becoming harder to breathe. That night I installed cameras, hidden ones, small enough to blend in with the furniture, and audio recorders in places I knew she'd be. I copied her phone, though I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. All I knew was that I had to keep my eyes open, that the truth was out there, and I wasn't about to stop until I found it. I needed her to think I was just a husband caught in the middle of a bad marriage, someone willing to forgive and forget. I needed her to feel safe, so I could get everything I needed without her suspecting a thing. I lay awake that night, watching the small blinking lights of the cameras, wondering how far she'd go before I had enough. Scene 4. The real scheme comes into focus. The first week of spying felt like a blur. I had set everything in motion, installed the cameras, hidden the recorders, and copied her phone. But I didn't have enough yet. I needed more. I needed to see it all. The lies, the plans, everything she and her boss were doing behind my back. I thought I could handle it. I kept telling myself I had to stay calm, stay focused, that I could get the proof I needed without letting the anger cloud my judgment. But every time I watched the footage, every time I heard their voices, I felt a piece of myself breaking off. The way they spoke about me, it was like I wasn't even there, like I was just a character in their game. It didn't take long before the affair became clear. There was no denying it now. They'd gone from whispering to full-on discussing their plans in the open. Their meetings in our house became more frequent, more confident. Sometimes I would listen, heart pounding as she sat on the couch, legs curled up under her, whispering into the phone about their next move. "Everything's in place," I heard her say one night. "We just need to keep him in the dark a little longer. Once the deal closes, we're golden. We'll move the money overseas, set up the new accounts. It'll be just the two of us then. No more distractions." Her words were a slap to the face. No more distractions. As if I were nothing more than a nuisance in her carefully constructed life. But the worst part wasn't just the affair. It was the business. The thing I had suspected for weeks but couldn't prove until now. They were selling confidential client strategies. I didn't need to hear the details to understand how dangerous that was. My stomach churned as I took notes, linking the names, the companies, the amounts, everything they'd planned. It was bigger than just her betrayal. This wasn't just about a cheating wife. This was corporate espionage. In the recordings, I could hear the enthusiasm in her voice, as if she were talking about a new business venture, not about destroying other companies for profit. "Once we get the green light," she said to him one night, "we'll steal their best ideas, sell them to the competitors. We'll make a fortune. We'll be unstoppable." It sickened me. I'd built my life from the ground up. Every decision I made was for the future I wanted, one that was built on honesty, hard work. And here they were, destroying everything for a quick payday. As I sat there in my office, surrounded by files, documents, and the weight of the situation, the real magnitude of what they were doing started to hit me. This wasn't just business as usual for them. They were using our home as their base of operations, the house where we'd built our life together. She had turned it into a command center for corporate theft. I couldn't just sit back and let it happen, but at the same time, I couldn't rush in without knowing everything. I had to be methodical, just like I had been with the business, calculated, precise. It was time to act, but I knew that every move I made had to be flawless. One slip-up, one misstep, and everything would come crashing down. She wasn't just my wife anymore. She was a partner in crime, and if I played this wrong, I'd lose everything. But there was still one thing left to do. Gather the final piece of evidence. I had to get them to expose themselves even further, to show me what they were really planning. I set up a meeting with John. He'd been invaluable so far, giving me the advice I needed without asking too many questions. But I needed him now more than ever. "I need you to run a background check," I told him when we met in the back of a quiet bar one night. "On her company, on her boss." John raised an eyebrow, but he didn't hesitate. "What are you looking for?" "I don't know yet, but I need to know everything about them, who they're working with, who they're selling to. I think it's bigger than we realized." He nodded, taking a sip of his drink. "I'll get started. You need anything else?" I paused, my mind racing. "Yeah, I need a little more time, but after that, I need you to help me make sure we're not just protecting my marriage. We're protecting the business, and we're protecting everything I've built." He met my gaze, his expression serious now. "You're not alone in this. We'll get it done." I left the bar that night with a plan, and the realization that the next steps would be crucial. I couldn't let her, or him, get away with it. I had the evidence, but now it was time to figure out how to use it without tipping them off. The trap was set. Now, I just had to make sure I was ready when it sprang shut. Scene 5. First contact with authorities. I met with the investigator in a small-town diner halfway between my place and his office. I'd kept it quiet, didn't want anyone to know what I was doing. Even John had been careful, making sure we didn't talk about this at the firehouse. I didn't need anyone finding out just yet. The diner smelled like grease and coffee, the kind of place that made you wonder how it stayed open. The investigator, A grizzled guy named Daniels was already sitting in a corner booth when I walked in. His eyes were sharp, scanning the room, taking in everything. He looked like the type of guy who'd been doing this too long, and that made him perfect for what I needed. He didn't need a lot of details. He just needed the proof. I slid into the booth across from him, the manila folder full of evidence between us. He looked at it, then back at me. "So, what do you got?" I opened the folder and laid it all out. Copies of the hotel receipts, screenshots of their conversations, the records of wire transfers, and the company contracts they'd been manipulating. Daniels didn't blink, didn't make any sound. He just scanned the pages quickly, flipping them over with precision, his eyes flicking from one page to the next. "This is good," he muttered, his voice low, careful. "Real good, but it's not enough." I felt my chest tighten. I thought it was enough. I'd been gathering these pieces for weeks. "Not enough?" I asked, my tone more clipped than I meant it to be. "I've got the conversation where they're selling confidential information, Daniels. You don't get more damning than that." "Don't get me wrong," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "This is usable, but you'll need more. Financial records, communications with buyers. This thing goes beyond an affair. You've got corporate espionage, money laundering, hell, even fraud. But if you want to go after her and her boss, we need solid, rock-solid proof. If this goes to trial, we'll need to tie her to the money, the transactions, all of it." I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I've got her keystrokes, everything she's been doing on the computer at home. I've been tracking it. I'm in her accounts." Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Keystrokes, huh? That's not bad. But we need to get her to crack under pressure. That means we hit her where it hurts." The financials, he was right. I knew he was. She wasn't just betraying me, she was betraying an entire business, entire companies. But she hadn't made the fatal mistake yet. She hadn't exposed herself completely. Not yet. I slid another piece of paper across the table. "Here's the latest wire transfer. Money sent overseas, hidden in a shell company. This could be the key, Daniels." He studied the paper for a beat, then nodded. "This is better. This is something we can work with. I'll need the original file, and you'll need to provide proof she's behind it. We'll go after her accounts, but you need to understand something, and you need to hear it from me now." I leaned in, bracing myself for what came next. "What?" "From here on out, it's by the book. You do anything that even smells like a violation, and this whole thing collapses. You want her behind bars? You want your life back? Then you play it straight. No more sneaky moves, no more slipping around. We take it all the way." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. I had already been crossing lines for months, but I knew now was the point of no return. If I didn't play it clean from here on out, everything would fall apart. "Understood," I said, the words sharp, calculated. "What's next?" Daniels leaned back in his seat, finally giving a small nod of approval. "I'll get started on the financial records. You get your lawyer. You'll need someone who knows how to handle this kind of mess." I had already anticipated that. The investigator had made it clear I'd need legal backup, someone who could handle the financial crimes tied to marital assets. Daniels had recommended a hard-nosed divorce lawyer, one who wasn't afraid to fight dirty if necessary. I didn't want to drag this out, didn't want to waste time. "I'll get the lawyer," I said, reaching for my phone, "and I'll keep gathering the evidence, but I need to make sure I'm ahead of her. She won't see this coming." Daniels gave me a look that was almost sympathetic. "Trust me, she will. You're not the first guy she's crossed, but you're the one who's going to bring her down." I felt a cold sense of resolve settle in my chest. Then let's make it happen. I left the diner with a plan in my head, a pit in my stomach, and a new layer of determination building inside me. The truth was clearer now. Jennifer wasn't just lying to me. She was playing a game, one that could destroy everything. But I wasn't going to let that happen. That night, I took the next step, contacting the divorce lawyer Daniels had mentioned. I couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. With every conversation, with every document I collected, I was inching closer to bringing everything to light. And when I finally did, it wouldn't just be Jennifer who'd lose. It would be her entire scheme, and everyone who'd helped her build it. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was protecting the business, the truth, and everything I'd built. The clock was ticking, and I had no intention of letting her get away with it. Scene 6. Playing the long game. The act had to be flawless. I needed her to believe that everything was fine, that I was still the husband she could control, the one who would sweep everything under the rug if it meant keeping the peace. If she thought I was clueless, if she thought I was just thinking things over like I said I was, she'd keep slipping, and I'd keep recording. I played the role to perfection. Every morning, I acted like everything was normal. I'd kiss her goodbye when she left for work, making sure to ask how her day was going, ask about the office, and pretend to care about the small talk. All while the cameras were silently recording, all while the phone apps I downloaded tracked every movement. My mind was always 2 steps ahead, watching, waiting. The counseling idea was my favorite part. I suggested it one night when we were sitting at the dinner table. She hadn't seemed to notice how much distance had grown between us. The late nights, the sudden silence, the coldness in her voice when she talked about anything that didn't involve business. It had to be my idea to try to fix things, so I suggested it casually, as though it was just a natural step. Maybe we should look into some counseling, I said, keeping my tone light, nonchalant. Her face froze for a second, her fingers still on her wine glass. Counseling? She asked, as if the idea hadn't even crossed her mind. Yeah, I said, glancing at her. It's been a while since we've talked like we used to, you know? Maybe we should make sure we're on the same page. I could see her calculating, wondering if I knew more than I let on, but she nodded slowly, offering a small, tight smile. Sure, that sounds fine. We'll look into it. And just like that, she fell right into the trap. She'd start thinking that she could let her guard down, that I was just the oblivious husband again. What she didn't know was that I was hearing everything, the lies, the secret plans, and the way she started talking about people and businesses she'd never mentioned before. One night, while she was pacing around on the phone, I overheard her talking about a small family-run farm she was going to destroy for a payday. Her voice was so cold, so detached, as she talked about squeezing the life out of a business just to make a few extra dollars for herself and her boss. They don't stand a chance, she said, laughing a little. Once we get them to sign this contract, we can just crush them. It'll be so easy to sell their strategies to the competitors. We'll make a killing. The way she talked about it, it made my blood run cold. There was no remorse. She didn't care. It wasn't just about a few bad decisions. She was willing to destroy real people's lives just to line her pockets. Her boss, too, he was the one pulling all the strings. He'd been teaching her the ropes of corporate sabotage. They didn't just want money. They wanted to take down entire businesses, shift market power to line their own pockets. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was just another player in his game. But she wasn't as smart as she thought she was. She was too reckless. And that was when I started to feel the weight of it all. The scheme wasn't just about infidelity. It was a full-blown corporate conspiracy. And she was using me, using our home as a hub for all of it. I had to stop it, but I also knew I couldn't act just yet. Not until I had everything. The tension in the house grew as the days passed. She became more and more jumpy, retreating to the bathroom for long phone calls, trying to cover her tracks. I knew she was nervous. Hell, I'd be nervous too if I knew someone was catching on to every word I said. I kept recording, even as she thought she was pulling away from me. I was closing in. Slowly, quietly, I was building the case that would bring her and her boss down. Then came the email. An internal audit email, marked urgent, arrived at her office one day while she was still at work. I watched her face drain of color as she opened it. Whatever she saw on that screen rattled her. She quickly deleted the email, but not fast enough for me not to catch the subject line. Immediate review of client transactions. I knew right then that the walls were closing in on her. Something was happening at the company that she didn't expect. Contracts were freezing, meetings were being called, and she was too deep in it all to get out. Her boss, too, was starting to feel the heat. The emails between them began to increase in frequency, and I could feel the tension building in every conversation. But the best part? She had no idea what I had on her. She thought she was still pulling the strings, still in control, and that was exactly how I needed her to feel. The more she talked, the more mistakes she'd make, the more information I could gather. Soon, it would be time to bring everything to light. But for now, I played the long game. I kept my distance, pretending everything was fine, even when every fiber of my being wanted to scream. It wouldn't be long before she'd have to face the truth. And when that day came, she wouldn't just lose me. She'd lose everything she had built on lies and betrayal. and I would be ready to make sure she couldn't run from it. Scene 7. The Trap Springs. Shut It All came to a head the day the investigator called. He didn't mince words. "We're ready to move forward," he said, his voice calm but with a sharp edge. "We've got the evidence we need. It's time." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it all settle in my chest. After months of careful observation, hours of recordings, and gathering documents that tied Jennifer and her boss to a web of corruption, fraud, and espionage, it was finally happening. I wasn't just going to catch her cheating. I was going to bring down an entire criminal operation. The investigator had pulled together enough to secure a warrant. The company was being investigated, and soon everyone would know the truth. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed her to understand that everything she'd done, everything she'd stolen, would cost her everything, and I would be the one to make sure of it. The evening was tense when Jennifer came home. She walked in like she always did, too carefree, too rehearsed. I had expected her to be on edge, but there was none of that. She was playing the role of the perfect wife, asking about my day as if nothing had changed. But there was a shift in the air when she finally stopped, catching a glimpse of the papers I'd laid out on the kitchen counter. Divorce papers, documents, printouts of her conversations, client transactions, everything that tied her to the crime. Her face went pale the moment she realized what was happening. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice trembling just slightly, but enough for me to catch it. "What's going on?" I stood up slowly, looking at her. "You know exactly what's going on." She froze. Her eyes darted from the papers to my face, trying to read me, trying to figure out how much I knew. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me struggle. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about the truth. "I've been watching, Jennifer," I said, my voice steady. "I know everything. The affair, the plans to destroy businesses, sell confidential information. You and your boss thought you could get away with it, that I wouldn't notice. But I did." Her breathing quickened, and for the first time in months, I saw something resembling fear flash in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. "Why?" I asked, keeping my voice low, controlled. "Why did you think you could lie to me, manipulate me, and ruin everything I built for your own greed? For what? A few extra dollars?" She opened her mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. She knew she couldn't lie her way out of this anymore. "You've been playing me from the start," I continued, stepping closer to her. "You used me. You used our life together as a cover for your business deals. And I let it happen. I let you manipulate me because I loved you. But I'm done. I'm done with the lies, the betrayal, and the corruption." Her face twisted, her lips trembling. "You don't understand." I cut her off. "I understand more than you think, and you'll understand a lot more when you're sitting across from your lawyer, trying to explain how you sold out your own company, your own integrity, and—" I paused, letting the words sink in. "Your marriage." I handed her the divorce papers, watching as her hand shook when she took them. There was no more pretending, no more hiding behind the facade of the perfect life. She was exposed, and now she had to face the consequences. "You're out by tomorrow," I said, turning away from her. "I'm changing the locks, and your things will be packed up and moved into storage by morning." Jennifer didn't move. She didn't say anything. She stood there, speechless, her face drained of all color. But I didn't need her to say anything. This was it. The end. That night, I did exactly what I said I would. I changed the locks, packed her belongings, and moved them into storage. As I stood in the empty house, I felt nothing but finality. There was no victory in this for me. I had taken every step with precision, calculated the risks, and now I was just waiting for the inevitable fallout, the storm that would come after everything I'd set in motion. But it wasn't over. It would never be over for her. The truth had to come out. And when it did, everything she had built on lies and deceit would crumble, piece by piece. I was ready to watch it happen. Scene 8. Legal and public fallout. The arrest didn't surprise me. It was inevitable. What did surprise me was the speed with which everything unraveled. One moment I was watching Jennifer come home, pale and shaken, her eyes wide with panic. And the next, her boss, her real man, was being hauled off in handcuffs on fraud and espionage charges. It didn't take long for her to be detained as well. The press got wind of the arrest quickly. and the story was everywhere. Her company's stock plummeted, and the media tore them apart. I had made sure to keep my distance from all of it. No interviews, no press. I didn't need the attention. I didn't want it. I didn't care if they blamed me or painted me as the victim. I didn't need their sympathy. The only thing I cared about was finishing this the right way, with the truth laid bare for everyone to see. The court case was as brutal as I expected. It took months to get everything in order, but when the judge handed down the verdict, it felt like a long-awaited breath. Jennifer's boss was convicted, as was she. Not for everything. I think the prosecution knew how far back the corruption went and how deep the rabbit hole was, but they nailed her on enough to keep her locked up for a long time. And then, as part of the settlement, the court awarded me the house and everything left in it. Everything she'd worked so hard to steal from me was now mine again. I could have sold it, moved on, but I didn't. I had everything cleaned out. The furniture she picked, the pictures she hung, gone. I renovated the entire house, turning it into something new, something that belonged to me now. It was the final closure I needed. A house full of memories that no longer held any meaning was now a blank canvas. My power equipment store expanded too. Without Jennifer and her boss draining my energy, I threw myself into the business. The years of hard work finally started paying off. I hired veterans, built a team I could trust, and opened a few more locations. People started to notice. Not the media, not the corporate sharks who had used me, but the locals. The ones who saw a guy who'd built something from the ground up, not by lying or cheating, but by working for it. I stopped taking calls from anyone who wanted to talk about my ex, about her trial, about the mess they'd left behind. I didn't care anymore. I had my own life to live now, and it was finally moving in the direction I wanted it to. The phone rang one morning, breaking the silence of my office as I sat at my desk, going over the numbers. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Hello? Is this the man behind the case with Jennifer Wright? The voice on the other end was smooth, professional. Yeah, that's me, I said, leaning back in my chair. Who's asking? My name's Karen. I'm with the Riverwood Gazette. I've been covering your case. Well, the public fallout at least. I'd love to do a piece on how it all played out. I leaned forward, intrigued but wary. I'm not looking for any press. I've kept my distance for a reason. I get that, she said quickly. But hear me out. We've spoken to a few other people involved, and they all mention how calm and calculated you were through it all. How you didn't lash out or make a public spectacle. You just went after what was yours and waited for the truth to come out. I think there's a story there. A story people would want to hear. I paused. She wasn't wrong. I hadn't laced every move with bitterness or anger. I'd just followed the steps, methodically, like I had learned to do in my business. I had waited, and now everything was falling into place. I don't know about being the calm and calculated type, I said, smiling a little, but I don't regret how it played out. It's about patience, really, about waiting until the truth can't be ignored anymore. I agree, Karen said, her voice taking on a softer tone. And you really saved a lot of people from losing everything. Those companies, those clients, were relying on you to protect their secrets. You did that. I sighed, leaning back again, staring out the window. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because they deserved to know the truth. I didn't want to burn everything down in a fit of rage. It wasn't personal, not at that point. It was about justice. Right, she replied. It's impressive how you managed to expose everything without ever letting it consume you. That takes real strength. I didn't know if I agreed with her, but I appreciated the recognition. Strength had come from knowing when to act, and more importantly, when to stay silent. I hadn't let my emotions drive me into some kind of vengeful frenzy. I had been patient, calculated, unstoppable. You can write whatever you think is fair, I said after a moment. I'm not looking for anything. I've got everything I need. Karen laughed softly. I think your story will resonate with people. If you change your mind and want to sit down for an interview, let me know. I hung up without another word. It wasn't about the story. It was about the work I'd done and the life I'd built in the aftermath. My focus had shifted. The truth had come out. And in the end, it hadn't destroyed me. It had rebuilt me. 6 months later, my stores were thriving. The first few locations had grown into a small network, and the veterans I hired had helped me build something meaningful. They respected hard work, just like I did. I saw how they looked at the business, how they helped me turn it into something even more than I'd imagined. I still think about Jennifer and her boss, about what they tried to take from me, from everyone around them. But it doesn't sting anymore. It doesn't consume me. I learned something in those months of planning and patience. Betrayal doesn't always destroy you. Sometimes it teaches you how to be patient, how to plan, how to wait until the truth is undeniable. Those lessons made me stronger than I was before. I wasn't broken, I was unstoppable. And now, with everything I'd built, I knew there was nothing anyone could take away from me again. Scene 9. One last visit. It was 2 weeks before she was supposed to start her prison sentence, and she showed up unannounced, standing on the porch with her hands clasped together, a look of forced composure on her face. I knew exactly what she wanted, some last-minute plea for forgiveness, for understanding. I wasn't having it. When I opened the door, I saw the look in her eyes, expectant, like she thought there was still a chance for some kind of reconciliation. She wasn't here to apologize for anything other than her own selfishness. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft, but I heard the crack in it, the uncertainty. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, looking at her, taking in the woman who'd shattered everything I'd worked for, the woman who I thought I knew. "No," I said flatly. "We can't." She looked surprised, but she stepped forward anyway, trying to push past me. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, okay? I know I've hurt you. I never meant for it to go this far." I didn't flinch. "You did mean it. You always meant it. Everything you did, everything you said, it was all a choice. You weren't trapped. You weren't confused. You were just selfish." Her face flushed, and for a second I thought I saw something other than guilt. Defensiveness, maybe. But she quickly masked it. "I know I've done horrible things, but please, can't you just forgive me? Can't we make this right before everything's over?" She looked down at the ground, and her voice dropped. "I didn't want this for us, for you, but we were good together, right? At one point I felt a pang in my chest, but it wasn't for her. It was for the version of her I'd once loved, the version that had been real, at least for a while. But that person was gone, and the woman standing before me wasn't her. "You're right, we were good together," I said, my voice low. "But that was before you made me a fool. Before you sold out everything for a paycheck. Before you broke every promise you ever made to me. You don't get to just waltz back in and act like none of it ever happened." I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the way she was trying to find a way back in, some escape from the mess she'd created. But she couldn't. Not with me. She swallowed hard, then pulled something out of her pocket, a small, familiar object, my wedding ring. She held it out to me, along with a note that she handed over without looking me in the eye. "I'm sorry. I should have been better. I don't expect you to take this back, but it's all I have left to offer." I looked at the ring, a symbol of everything that was lost. A reminder of the woman who had promised to love me, who had built a life with me, only to rip it apart when it no longer suited her. I took the ring and the note, but I didn't react. I handed them back to her. "No, Jennifer. You don't get to come here and expect forgiveness. You don't get to act like you've been wronged. I've already given you everything you deserve, and now I'm closing the door on you for good." She stood there, frozen for a moment, as though waiting for something. Maybe for me to change my mind, to soften. But I didn't. I didn't have it in me anymore. "I'm done," I said again, my voice steady. "There's nothing left to fix, not for me, not for you." I reached for the door, holding it open. She stared at me, and for the briefest second, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something close to regret, maybe even shame. But it wasn't enough, not after everything. She took the ring and the note from my hand, but instead of making another plea, she just nodded. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then, without another word, she turned and left. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. I knew that chapter was closed. The finality of it hit me all at once as I shut the door behind her. It wasn't a relief. It wasn't some moment of victory. It was just done. The marriage was over, not just on paper, but in every way that mattered. There was no triumph, no satisfaction. Just silence. A quiet that I hadn't felt in years. I walked back inside, staring at the empty walls, the spaces where she used to leave her things, where we used to be. It was all so foreign to me now. She was gone, and for the first time, I could breathe. But there was no joy in it. I spent the next few days rearranging my life, packing up the remnants of what had once been a home and turning it into something that was just mine now. The house felt too big, too empty, but at the same time, it felt like a fresh start, like I could finally begin to rebuild without the weight of her betrayal hanging over me. It wasn't a triumph. It was the end of a story that I wished never had to be written. But it was necessary, and in the silence, in the emptiness, I found something I didn't expect. Peace. No more lies, no more pretending. I was free. And that was the beginning of everything that came next. Scene 10. Moving forward. 6 months had passed since the trial ended. The house was no longer a symbol of betrayal, but a blank canvas, renovated and free from the ghost of her presence. I'd erased every trace of Jennifer, and now it felt like my life had shifted into something new, something I could actually take pride in. My stores were thriving. The community had rallied behind me, especially the veterans I'd hired, and the small network I'd started to build was gaining momentum. Business was booming, and with each day I felt more distant from the man I had been, the one who believed in her, the one who'd been blindsided. Now I was focused, methodical. I'd turned the rage into something more productive. It wasn't just the business that was growing. I had too much time to think, too many long nights staring at the ceiling, reflecting on the last few years. I'd given everything to someone who never truly saw me. It made me question how I'd let myself get there, how I'd believed in someone who wasn't real. I was walking through the latest store location when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Hello?" I said, adjusting the phone between my ear and shoulder as I moved a stack of equipment aside. "Is this the man behind the case with Jennifer Wright?" The voice was calm, professional, a little too smooth. I sighed, already tired of hearing about her. "Yeah, that's me. Who's asking?" "My name's Karen. I'm with Riverwood Gazette. I've been covering the story, the aftermath of what went down with your wife." I frowned. "I'm not interested in interviews." "I understand," she said quickly. "But we're trying to put together a piece on the long-term effects of corporate corruption, especially when it involves someone in your position. You were so composed throughout everything, and the way you handled it, systematically, it's something people are noticing. Your story, your patience, it's impressive." I paused, not sure how to respond. She wasn't wrong. I had done things by the book, in the most methodical way possible. I had let the truth come out piece by piece, until there was no denying it. "I didn't do it for the attention," I said finally. "I didn't even think about how it would look. I just wanted the truth out there, and to make sure everyone who'd been affected by her actions got what they deserved." "Exactly, and I think people need to hear it. They need to know how it's not just about getting revenge. It's about exposing a bigger issue, not letting personal emotions dictate how things play out." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything settle back into my chest. "I did what I had to do," I said quietly. "But it wasn't about revenge. It was about exposing the lies, about making sure no one else gets hurt because of it." Karen paused. "So, you don't regret how it played out?" "No," I said, the answer coming without hesitation. "I don't. The way I handled it, the way it all came to light. I don't regret that. What I regret is trusting her. But that was my mistake, not anyone else's." She seemed to be mulling it over on the other end. "Do you mind if I ask how you stayed so calm through it all? I mean, most people would have gone off the rails, lashed out." I thought about it for a moment. It wasn't easy, not at first. But I knew that if I let my emotions take over, I'd lose everything. I didn't want to become a victim of my own anger, so I kept it together. I waited. That patience, though, it worked. It's clear that you were never going to let them get away with it. You just made sure the truth was undeniable." "Exactly," I said. "I didn't want to become a headline for something I couldn't control. I had to make sure I controlled the narrative, that I was the one revealing the truth, not the other way around." I could hear the quiet nod on the other end of the line. "Well, it worked. You've certainly got the attention of a lot of people. The clients you protected, for one, they're grateful, and they're starting to see you as someone who went above and beyond." I didn't say anything to that. Part of me didn't want the recognition, didn't care about being seen as the hero. But another part of me felt the weight of that responsibility, of knowing that I'd done something good, something meaningful. I wasn't looking for validation, but it was nice to know it was there. You can write your piece, I said, after a long pause. But don't expect me to make it all easy for you. I'm not going to be the one to gloat. I'm done with that part of it. She laughed lightly. Don't worry, I won't put you on a pedestal. But I think people will find your story inspiring. How you stuck it out, didn't let everything fall apart. I didn't have much of a choice, I said. It wasn't about being inspiring. It was about doing what was right. The next few months passed in a blur of work, growth, and quiet reflection. I spent less time looking over my shoulder, wondering when it would all come crashing down, and more time building something new. The stores kept thriving, the team I'd built was solid, and there was a sense of peace in the everyday grind. I'd moved on in every way that mattered, but the lessons from that time had shaped me into something else. Patient, methodical, unstoppable. All things I never thought I'd be before Jennifer and her betrayal, but all things I would never let go of now. One morning, as I went through the numbers, a message popped up on my phone. A thank you from the client company whose secrets I'd protected. It was brief, but it carried weight, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Not for me, not for the victory, but for the people I'd saved from losing it all. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes of the past, and I'd done it the right way. Nothing would stand in my way again.